Well, we've completed the first leg of the campaign trail, and we're headed on to the second. Let's take a little recap.
That's right, Mitch. We started in Eureka with Eureka County's Lincoln Day dinner. Then we went to Yerington for Lyon County. Then we went to Elko for Elko County. We came back to Battle Mountain for Lander County, Winnemucca for Humboldt County, and ended up in Lovelock for the Pershing County Lincoln Day dinner. We're starting the second leg of the Lincoln Day circuit now. Last night we were in Washoe County, the Reno Lincoln Day dinner. This morning we're going to be right here in Story County in Virginia City. This evening, Carson City County, and we will end up tomorrow evening then in Douglas County at the Carson Valley Inn in Gardnerville. From there we will finish the tour in Fallon in Churchill County.
For those who have not made it out to a Lincoln Day dinner in the past, tell them a little bit about why they should be attending these events.
We know the statistic that only 25% of the people who are eligible to vote actually register to vote, and only 25% of those who are registered to vote actually vote. That means that there has to be a way that we can gather people in, get their interest, give them the information so that they can make that informed vote. So it isn't just a small percentage of the people deciding who is governing in this country and in our cities and in our states. And so these Lincoln Day dinners really gather the faithful, the ones that say, I really understand, I need to be an informed voter. I need to know who the candidates are. I need to talk to them personally. And that's what the Lincoln Day dinner does. It's called the Lincoln Day dinner because Abraham Lincoln was the very first Republican president during the Civil War. We honor him and his memory. We also honor President Reagan. So it's a time for people to get together and honor the principles that we hold dear as conservatives, which is lower taxes, less government regulation, those things that we put into our party platform every year. And as you know, I run on that party platform because that's really who I am as a lower taxes, less government regulation person. And you will meet those kinds of candidates at these Lincoln Day dinners.
Well, let's continue our journey.
Let's do that. "25 years later, I served in your legislature and I was able to get a law passed that said you can homeschool your children in Nevada without any other caveats, just straight up, you can homeschool your children. That's what choice in education really is about, is giving us the freedom to make those kinds of choices. Again, I'm Sharron Engel. I'm running for Congressional District 2. I want your vote. You can find out more about me at SharronEngel.com. We have a closed primary state. If you're not registered Republican, you can't vote in the primary. And incidentally, that's where this race is. Because we live in this congressional district was reapportioned so that it would be a very heavily Republican district. And because of that, only Republicans have won this district. And so that means that the very first election in the process is the most important one. That's where we choose the best Republican. And that person generally wins the office. In fact, it has never happened that a Democrat has won this office or an independent. So that's why this primary is so important. I started in politics as kind of an accidental politician. My son, Joy's brother, failed kindergarten and he was demoralized by the experience. So I thought, well, I'll just take him home as an educator. I'll homeschool him. And that's when a judge told me from the bench that Even though the law said we could homeschool in Nevada, law should say you can't homeschool unless you live more than 50 miles away from the school. So he actually legislated from the bench. That angered me, first of all, because he had interrupted what I needed to do for my child, but even more basically, he had violated the law by deciding that he would just make up the law, and because of the case law that is in place because of that, that became the law of Nevada. And now everyone who wanted to homeschool had to be under his decision that you had to live 50 miles or more away from the nearest school.
You are running for Congress, District 2, against another Republican candidate, the incumbent Mark Amodei. What are the differences between you and Mark Amodei for this congressional seat?
I'm a lower taxes, less government regulation, more individual freedom Republican, and I think that Mark's record will prove that he's voting for taxes. In fact, in 2003, we have a record together. I served in the legislature at the same time. I was on the Assembly side, Mark was on the Senate side. On the Assembly side, we were in the minority, but the Fearless 15 held through 2 special sessions against that huge tax increase that was the biggest tax increase in Nevada history. At the very end, one of our number voted for the tax, so we lost our 1/3. But on the Senate side, there were only 2 senators that voted against that big tax increase. Barbara Sagaski and Sandra Tiffany. Mark Amodei voted for the big tax increase. So we differ on taxes. I think we also differ on public policy, and that's, again, on the record, apples to apples, our legislative record. He voted for the rural county representation to go to the South in 2001 during reapportionment. We had an opportunity to expand the legislature by 6 seats, 2 in the Senate, 4 in the Assembly, give all of those to Clark County, and allow the rural counties to keep their representation. That was the plan that I favored. I voted against sending our seats south. Mark voted to send them south. So I just feel like we're at opposite ends on a lot of these issues, and that people need to look at the record, even when we get to the federal level and the places that he has cast votes. I fought hard to repeal Obamacare here in this state. He has voted continuously to fund Obamacare. I believe that we should secure our borders and make sure that we have immigration law that's workable. I don't think that amnesty should even be on the table.
Now, in terms of what the Congressional District 2 encompasses, land has always been at the forefront of any discussion in the rural counties. I know many people in the county would like to see more of the state take over. Others don't think the state can. We're also looking at military proposals for expansion with the Naval Air Station Fallon Range east of Fallon, and then also Nellis. So how do you feel about the control of state land, and also if it's viable for the military to expand their training areas with over federal land?
In some cases it is viable. I think that Area 51, we all would say that that's a secure area that's been used for nuclear testing, and so it's not really a viable place for us to think about putting into private ownership. I think that that's a good place for the military to be, but it's also a good place for private industry to be. In the case of Yucca Mountain, it's a private installation for a repository, but also for a recycling of the nuclear spent rods. We know that 80% or more of those rods is still viable for use, and they do recycle that in many foreign countries. We should be thinking about that here and making it the industry of Nevada. When we talk about the land issue, we need to also look at the enumerated powers of the Constitution. And I don't see it within the enumerated powers of the Constitution that the federal government has the power over wild horses in our state, for instance, or the minerals in our state, for instance. There are just certain things in that enumerated powers that do not apply to our public lands here in Nevada, and so Nevada needs to be a stakeholder in many of these issues, and those are some of the laws, I guess, that are on the books that we need to look at and make sure that they are benefiting Nevada.
Gun issues, and I don't see it dying down for a while, but how is there anything we can do through education, background checks, or anything like that would help mitigate some of this? Do you what do you propose?
Well, I'm a Second Amendment person, and I mean we have the right to keep and bear arms. I don't think that a gun is anything more than a tool, and it is the human element that we really need to be looking and focusing on rather than the tool. I don't see anyone focusing on knives or cars or airplanes, and those have all been tools in mass slaughter and massacre. So you need to get the focus off the tool and back onto the real root of the problem, which is the human element, as I said. And this needs to then be a compilation, I guess, of the stakeholders that really, especially in the case of school shootings, law enforcement, the schools, and social workers, all in this Florida episode had an opportunity to know about this person, and yet they were not collaborating on it and looking for solutions. Obviously, this person had been crying for help for years and years, and we don't have a good enough system in place to deal with that human element, and I think that's where we should be looking. As far as the victims of these crimes, we need to be proactive. I was in Israel recently, and one of the fellows told me he felt safer in Israel than he ever did back home in Indiana, and the reason was because they are aware of the problem, the terror that surrounds them, or people that just aren't right that are around them. And everyone there understands that they need to be the first line of defense for their own safety. So when we're talking about the first line of defense in a school, we should be allowing those who work in that school to be that first line of defense. We have concealed carry laws that allow for citizens to defend themselves and to carry weapons concealed. So do they check those rights at the door of their workplace? I don't believe that's true, and I don't think that we should have gun-free zones that invite criminals, and I don't think that we should have places that allow crime to go on.
Explosion of growth, particularly in Clark County and Reno, and now with the Tahoe-Reno Industrial Complex. Do you foresee the government getting involved to help the states with grants and extra money for training workers and assistance through rural development to help people find affordable housing?
I believe that all of those things would be better handled at the local level by local officials, and also with some state help with those. Sometimes we cross county lines. We've got some of that going on here with Washoe and Story and Lyon County in the north, and so I think where it crosses county lines, then you have a state interest, but the federal government is too far away for this, and so they should just give us the freedom to act. And also that then gets us back to the very first question, which was the land. If we're going to be able to develop the land, we have to have a way to have the land available. So the federal government then needs to give us the freedom, and I don't think that it's something that they should have power over in the first place. So I lose that term, give us the freedom, very loosely, because I think we should have had the freedom all along to determine how our state lands are used. I am Sharron Engel, running for Congressional District 2, and I want your vote.